Okay, today we're speaking with Doctora Christina Rodriguez. She is a first generation Latina, the founder of Latinas with Masters, which was one of the first podcasts nominated for a Catalyst Award back in 2021.
Whoop, whoop.
Woo! So, on behalf of My Tribe Media, thank you so much for meeting with us today. We're so excited to see what you've been up to and grab some knowledge from you. All right.
Thank you. Of course.
So our first question, you are pursuing your doctorate while building Latinas with Masters. How did your doctoral experience evolve since you started the podcast, and what insights from your studies have most influenced your approach to supporting first-gen students?
Woo, that's a bread and butter question. First, I want to say thank you for welcoming me into your space. I love all the work that, this community does. Man, I want to say that when I first started my doctoral journey, I didn't realize that it would become my healing journey. My healing journey as a first gen Latina, my healing journey as the eldest daughter, um, my healing journey of healing my inner child, right? As again, as a daughter, as a sister, and definitely as a mother. Um, so I definitely feel that having created Latinas with Masters at the beginning of my doctoral journey definitely helped me, along with other Latinas, name the experiences that we were experiencing both in academia, both in corporate America, in the job place, right? A lot of things that are gatekept with women of color, right? Especially when you rise to climbing up the corporate ladder. And I feel like the podcast evolved is, it opened up a community of educated Latinx individuals, but also, a lot of people reached out to me saying, "Hey, I don't have a master's, but I want to share my story." And I tell a lot of people that Latinas with Masters is just the brand name, but I welcome everybody into this space. You don't have to have a master's, you don't even have to have a degree. Um, you have a message, you can be on the podcast, right? And I love that a lot of community members have resonated with the people I've had as guests, the topics that we're talking about, because again, a lot of the information is not accessible to us. And so then the reason of the podcast was because I'm here to share the hard knocks of higher education, right? Or whatever your message is, something that you don't necessarily read in a book. Sometimes your supervisor is not going to tell you, right? You're listening to it from your peers, from your colega, from your community, right? And that's where education started in a lot of our communities, is in the community. And so then I'm very grateful that the podcast has created that safe space for a lot of people to come on the podcast and share their experiences and not feel judgment, not feel that they're alone in this space, but then also being able to name exactly the experiences to help others. And it's always to help others in the space.
I think that's so beautiful the way you put it. It's like a healing journey. Like definitely
Mm-hmm.
relate. Like as I'm an undergrad at the moment, but just as a first gen, just really seeing how because I grew up in East LA, so it's a very underserved community. So it really definitely is just like okay, I can do more than what I was like maybe like not told when I
Mm-hmm.
was younger. Like
Exactly.
so that's really nice. All right, second question, which is it kind of builds off what I just asked, but so you created this platform to provide space and community for current and future students. What specific strategies or resources are you developing to address the unique mental health and wellness challenges that first generation college students often face, especially as they balance cultural expectations with academic pressures?
Mm-hmm. Wow, I feel like the big one is imposter syndrome, right? Again, being able to name that, to say imposter syndrome. I didn't know what that term was, especially as the only Latina in my business school when I was getting my master's. I knew what it felt like. I knew that what I was experiencing felt uncomfortable. I couldn't tell you in my master's program that that was imposter syndrome. I didn't learn that term until my doctoral journey, right? And so that's why it became my healing journey. So I was like, oh, what is this imposter syndrome you speak of? Like, what is that, right? But it was a familiar feeling. So I definitely feel like imposter syndrome is probably the number one thing that a lot of Latinas reach out to me about when they're navigating graduate school. I also feel that um, navigating workplace trauma is a big one, especially as a woman of color. Again, going up the corporate ladder, going up higher education, administration level, even if you're faculty. I definitely feel like as women of color, we deal with so many microaggressions, we deal with racism, we still with discrimination. And there's people out there that are pinging us against each other, whether that's a Latina against a Black woman or a Black woman against another, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so then I definitely feel like I'm able to see that at firsthand. And it's up to me, right? How I choose to respond to that. And there was a situation where I had one of my colleagues who happened to be a Black woman say, "Hey, I recognize that the institution wants us to be against each other. And I just want to let you know that I'm not against you. And I, value you and I see you for who you are. And you're also doing the work. So just know that we're not going to feed in what the institution wants us to be, which is Black against brown." And I appreciate that a lot because I'm sure that was very uncomfortable for her to come up to me and share. And it was uncomfortable for me to hear that as well, because
Right.
mine was not there. And then looking at the signs, I was like, oh wow, you're right, sis. Like this is what's happening, right? Um, and that can take a mental health toll on someone, right? Because now they want to devalue me as a person. They want to devalue this other woman as well. So I definitely feel that going through graduate school or being a student is one thing, and then you transition from being a student into an administrator or into a professional, and I feel like that's where the real work begins. So I definitely feel that the imposter syndrome and then the racial trauma and the microaggressions that we experience, I definitely, if we're able to name that, and us having control, and us being women of color having control on how we um take charge of that, I think will have a bigger impact, right, in the long run of how you deal with certain situations and scenarios as they come across.
Yeah, no, I love that moment. No, definitely. It's taken a lot of courage to even just like have that like those uncomfortable conversations. But I love that
Yes,
you built that sisterhood between you two, and it's
exactly.
yeah,
Hmm.
awesome. Okay, third question. What advice do you have for someone, especially women, who want to launch their own podcast? How has the transition from podcasting to building an interactive community platform changed the way you're able to support first-gen Latinas, and what kind of engagement are you seeing?
Start. I would just say start it. When I started the podcast, I didn't know what I was doing. I had an idea. Like I created your marketing homegirl podcast through the marketing lens that I had working in housing, and people reaching out to me for marketing advice. And I just, a lot of people were telling me like, you should just have a podcast so that way I can just refer my friends and families that want to start businesses to your podcast. So sometimes it's listening to your audience, listening to people of what they see in you, because sometimes we don't see it within ourselves. And we are our biggest critics, right, to ourselves. And so then that gave me the courage to start the Latinas with Masters podcast, because I already did it through your marketing homegirl. But I would say that sometimes some of the feedback I get from people is, oh, I don't want to start a podcast because so and so has a podcast already, or they already talk about first gen and they already do this, right? But if you think about it, look how many shoe brands are out there, look how many clothing brands are out there, how many car brands are out there, there's so many brands out there. Just because somebody is doing it does not give them the right of only doing that. And also, you shouldn't limit yourself because someone else has that concept or same theme. I would say, what is unique about yourself on how you're going to do the podcast, right? What are you going to talk about, right? Because only you can be you. And so then I remember even at job interviews when they say, like, what makes you fit for the job or why you, right? And I'm always like, why not? Like, I am who I am, right? There is no other Christina. And so then the spaces that I've been in have people come back because of me, not because of the product. There's so many apartments, right? But I tell them the difference between you living here and you living there is that I'm not there, I'm here. So if you're a resident here, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to put in the work order. I make sure that, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's the same concept that I have, is having the podcast or anytime when I help somebody, it's the uniqueness that I bring to the space. And another thing too is I remember I used to like doubt myself and say, um, oh, I know I'm not right for this person, or I know they don't want me because of this. And I just remember my colega, my homegirl, telling me like, what you say matters, like what you bring into the universe matters. And I would even change that mindset to say, you are the right person for the right people. And the moment she said that, it just clicked to me. I was like, you know what? You're right. If people are reaching out to Latinos with Masters, if people are saying, we want you to be the keynote speaker, we want to interview you for this podcast, you know, it's because they want me for who I am, for my authentic self. I don't have to be someone that I'm not. And so then that would be my advice, is to do the podcast anyways, because there's going to be someone out there listening to that podcast to be like, wow, this is the podcast I always wanted to hear, or this is exactly what I was looking for, right? So that's why I say, like, whatever it is that you want to start, just do it. And the audience and your community is going to speak for you.
Well, definitely finger snaps to that. Yes. I love the analogy though about like the brand. That's I love that. That's definitely gonna be ingrained in my head now. But
Yeah.
when you were saying we are our biggest critics, it like we just already are putting ourselves in like, oh, it's not gonna happen. So I read this quote yesterday actually, and it reminded me what you said. So it said, many people can tell you no, don't let yourself be the first person.
Right
And
there.
I was right there. Yep.
Hmm.
Alrighty. All right, so our last question, which kind of just sums up kind of everything that you mentioned. So
Hmm.
recent data shows that while Latina degree attainment is increasing, significant gaps still exist. What are the most pressing challenges you're hearing from your community members as they pursue graduate education in 2025 and 2026? And how are you adapting your programming to address these evolving needs?
Ooh, girl, I need to take a breather for that one because that's like the centering of my dissertation research, right? Which is like my experience as a Latina in graduate school, and there were a lot of barriers that I experienced to get my doctorate degree. It was not given to me. It definitely was not free. And I definitely feel like, especially the climate that we're in right now, I mean, even my background, right, says we stand and support undocumented students. I definitely feel that if you are an undocumented Latinx, right, it's for anybody who is undocumented at this point, right? But the question is geared towards more like the Latinx community, is a barrier, right? The barrier of having status in the United States that affects even the tuition that you're paying in an institution where your classmate is getting the same education, getting the same, learning curriculum from the same professor in the same classroom, but yet your immigration status affects the tuition rate in which you're getting your education. That is a big fat barrier, point blank, period, right? Like, I always do the analogy of housing because there's fair housing laws, right? Do the Civil Rights Act, through MLK and everything. It's like the apartment is 2,500. The apartment is not 2,500 if you're undocumented, right? So why is tuition different for those with a different immigration status when other spaces are not charging you, more because of your immigration status? It's only in higher education. Yeah, it's supposed to be an equitable place for everybody. That's not equity, right? So there's that barrier. There's also a barrier just with anybody, right? Because I know this focuses on first gen, being the first, right? You don't know what you don't know. You don't know how to navigate financial aid. You don't know how to navigate speaking with your professors, advocating for yourself, the rights that you have for students. I feel like that was a big one for me, just navigating higher ed in general. I definitely feel that being a student parent is also a big one too. My one of my dissertation committees said that during my dissertation defense was like, yo, she did all of this and being a parent. But because to me, that's my default. Like, I'm a mother first, right? And I got kids to feed and I show up every day, regardless of the BS that I'm dealing with. I sometimes forget that I'm a parent. So the fact that someone else had to acknowledge that, to be like, she wrote a whole dissertation, she experienced all of these, barriers, and she was a mother. I was like, I am a mother. Like, yeah, I did do that. But because I'm such a mama bear and that's my default, I sometimes forget. So definitely a student parent. I definitely feel like it's a big barrier, especially within the Latino community. we have big families, and some of us were young parents. Some of us have to take care of our own kids and our elders, and I know it's not unique to the Latino community, but it is the majority of our Latino community, right? Like we're taught to stay within close proximity of our family, like going to school out of state is like a big thing, so that's why we pick schools near our community. That's why we sometimes delay going back to school because we have to take care of our families, and so I feel like those are like a couple of things that are barriers for our Latinx community. Again, not specifically unique only to Latino community, but culturally we're accustomed to that. We're taught to think in that mind, in that framework, right? um but my dissertation experiences all of that, experiences the barriers of the 1% of Latinas getting doctorate degrees. It experiences, institutions closing and there being a merger. It talks about the new institutions having students take more classes, right? Disrupting their education and their educational plan, graduation date, tuition. That's all my dissertation. And that's all that I experienced within my doctoral journey, right? And that is the experience of this Latina, which is me, right? So I feel like higher education could do way better. If they really wanted to, they would, right? And sometimes that gets exhausting. The emotional labor that we have to carry for me to care about people of color, is sometimes disheartening because why does it take a Latina? Why does it take a Black woman to care about students of color? That should be an institution, right? Um, Intentionality. And it has shown me real quick that it's not, And so again, there's a lot of barriers, but I feel like those were like the main ones from my personal lived experiences.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, no, definitely. I find myself still navigating. I'm going into my senior year, but there's just things I don't know about on campus that they're not like, promoted enough. So I definitely
Hmm.
relate to that. And then financial aid, always have
Yeah,
that time to make it appeal every time. But thankfully, we have people like you who are out there and supporting us and showing great just love to the first gen community. So we definitely appreciate that.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's it for my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add or a closing
Uh,
remark?
oh, I know, right? Closing remarks. I want to give love to the second and the third gens, because I feel like, or the 1.5 gens, like a lot of people reach out to me. They're like, hey, what about the 1.5? Or what about for the second and third? And I sometimes forget that I'm raising second generation children, And so then definitely I want to give a shout out to them as well. You're also seen, you're also heard, you're being recognized, right? And I'm hoping that the work that we're doing is hopefully eliminating, right, a lot of the barriers that you'll be experiencing, right? Navigating higher education. But I want to give a shout out to them. Um, my whole thing is like, if you listen to my podcast, if you follow and like, if you comment to me, like that's happiness to me. Community is everything to me. So I definitely welcome anyone, everybody to listen to the podcast or say hello on Instagram, which is the majority space that I'm in. Reach out if you have any questions. Like there is no wrong answers or wrong questions. There is no dumb questions, right? Because I guarantee you, I thought of them all. And we all tried to like also trying to figure that out as well. Um, no, that's it. Like I appreciate a lot of the love and the support that I get from the Latinos with Masters community, and I appreciate being in this space. And again, I'm just the brand of Latinos with Masters, but there's thousands of us, right, that are also doing the work in healthcare and in the legal field and higher education. So shout out to every Latina with master and future Latina with master that is out there that wants to do better within the field that they're in, because we definitely need individuals like you in those spaces to speak up for us. So yeah, that's all I would like to say.
Yay, thank you.